My future's with you, if you don't mind.
That's right, dear. That's right.
You know what's really shocking about old Hollywood? It wasn't the scandals, the secret affairs, or the studio feuds. It was the quiet kindness hiding behind the fame. Icons who proved that decency could outshine stardom. From Cary Grant taking the blame for a co-star's breakdown to Audrey Hepburn nursing sick children in war zones, these 20 legends showed that fame doesn't have to corrupt. It can illuminate compassion. 1. Cary Grant, grace under pressure. Behind Cary Grant's polished charm was a man quietly stitched together by heartbreak. At 9, he was told his mother had died, only to discover decades later she'd been institutionalized by his father. That trauma didn't harden him, it humanized him. Grant carried that empathy onto every set, remembering names, cracking jokes with stagehands, and offering quiet reassurance to nervous co-stars. When Katharine Hepburn broke down during Bringing Up Baby, he deliberately flubbed his lines to buy her time to recover, taking the blame in front of the director. Off-screen, he mailed handwritten notes to fans struggling financially, often slipping in small checks, signed only CG. During World War II, he donated his entire Philadelphia Story salary to war relief. Kindness doesn't need applause. It survives on privacy. 2. James Stewart, the hero who actually flew. Before America entered World War II, while other stars hid behind contracts, James "Jimmy" Stewart walked into a recruitment office and volunteered. He was already 33, a millionaire-leading man who could have stayed home, but humility outranked comfort. Starting as a private, he climbed to colonel, flying 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. His courage wasn't a headline stunt. It was duty, plain and personal. After the war, he refused special treatment, returning to film sets with the same soft-spoken decency that made him beloved. Crew members said he treated the janitor exactly like the producer, always with a handshake, always with respect. When his wife battled cancer, he poured his fame into funding medical research, quietly and without credit. Service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It just changes form. 3. Audrey Hepburn, elegance that healed. Audrey Hepburn's grace wasn't an act, it was armor forged in survival. As a child in Nazi-occupied Netherlands, she starved, hid from soldiers, and watched executions in the streets. That horror burned one conviction into her soul: never be the cause of another's suffering. Years later, when fame crowned her as Hollywood's darling, she used her light to enter the darkest places on Earth. As a UNICEF ambassador, she cradled dying children in Ethiopia, crossed minefields in Sudan, and comforted mothers who'd lost everything. Even while battling terminal cancer, she insisted on one final mission, to Somalia, saying, "I can't bear the thought of all those children when they could be saved." On set, she ate with electricians instead of elites and refused a private dressing room. Beauty captures attention. Compassion keeps it forever. 4. Gregory Peck, the gentle rebel. Gregory Peck didn't just play noble men, he lived like one. Long before To Kill a Mockingbird made him a moral icon, he was already defying the quiet rules of Hollywood politeness. On set, he'd sit with crew members during lunch, asking about their families instead of schmoozing producers. But it was during filming in the segregated South that his character truly showed. Peck openly dined with local Black community leaders, refusing to eat at whites-only establishments, even when warned it might end his career. He believed decency wasn't situational, it was constant. Beyond activism, he funded scholarships for underprivileged youth, mentored young actors, and personally visited hospitals under fake names just to hand out books to children. Integrity isn't a performance. It's what you do when no one's clapping. 5. Bob Hope, laughter in war zones. While others measured success in trophies, Bob Hope measured it in smiles, specifically those of weary soldiers halfway around the world. For nearly 50 years, he traded red carpets for battlefields, performing in jungles, deserts, and aircraft carriers under the glow of floodlights and gunfire. During the Vietnam War, a nurse once found him at 2 a.m., sitting in a tent, reading a blinded Marine's letters aloud because no one else could. Hope memorized names, remembered birthdays, and wrote back to hundreds of troops long after the cameras stopped rolling. Between shows, he visited field hospitals, cracked jokes through the smell of blood, and sometimes cried behind the curtains. He even risked sniper fire just to make one more base laugh. He didn't perform for fame, he performed for morale, and that saved lives. 6. Fred Astaire, perfection with politeness. Fred Astaire was obsessed with precision, but never at the expense of people. Behind the flawless choreography and effortless charm was a man who believed grace meant how you treated others, not just how you moved. From his vaudeville days, he remembered what it felt like to be dismissed by managers and vowed no one on his set would ever feel small. Every morning, he greeted the crew by name, and every evening, he thanked them personally before leaving. When a young chorus dancer broke her ankle during the Barclays of Broadway, Astaire quietly covered her hospital bills and gave her a paid speaking role so she could keep her job. Even in his 70s, he refused to sit while stagehands worked, saying, "They're standing for me. I can stand for them." Perfection impresses. Humility endures. 7. Dean Martin, the quiet protector. Dean Martin's public image was all charm and cocktails, but offstage, he was the calm in every storm. While Sinatra ruled the nightlife, Martin preferred dinner with his kids over late-night chaos, often slipping out early with a smile. "It's Frank's world. I just live in it." Beneath the showman exterior was a man fiercely loyal to his friends and family. When Sammy Davis Jr. was denied entry to Las Vegas hotels due to segregation, Martin refused to perform until his friend was treated equally, forcing venues to change policy. On another occasion, when a crew member's child fell ill, Martin quietly paid the medical bills and arranged top specialists, never revealing his name. Those who knew him best said he was sober, disciplined, and deeply kind. Real power doesn't shout, it shields. 8. Jack Lemmon, the set's sunshine. Jack Lemmon's kindness didn't come from polish. It came from pain. Growing up with an alcoholic father and later battling his own addiction, he understood struggle too well to ever look down on anyone. On set, he bridged the invisible wall between stars and crew with humor and humility. When newcomers joined, he'd shake their hands and say, "You're part of the family now." During Some Like It Hot, he noticed everyone melting under heavy costumes in the California heat. So he hired an ice cream truck for the crew every afternoon at his own expense. When his friend Walter Matthau suffered a heart attack, Lemmon spent days reading scripts to him in the hospital and demanded studios delay filming until he recovered. He wasn't just the funniest man on set, he was the kindest heartbeat in the room. 9. Danny Kaye, the comic humanitarian. Danny Kaye didn't just make people laugh, he made laughter a language of healing. Growing up poor in Brooklyn, surrounded by immigrants who spoke a dozen tongues, he learned that humor could bridge any gap. That gift took him from vaudeville stages to Hollywood stardom. But he never forgot the children who had none of his luck. After adopting his daughter following years of miscarriages, Kaye became UNICEF's first Goodwill ambassador, visiting war zones, hospitals, and refugee camps. Despite a crippling fear of flying, in one hospital visit, he found a carpenter's daughter ill in bed and performed an impromptu comedy show for the entire ward. No cameras, no press. He even conducted the New York Philharmonic, raising millions for musicians' pensions, then gave credit to them, not himself. He didn't chase applause, he chased smiles. 10. Carole Lombard, the star who gave all. Carole Lombard's laughter could light a soundstage, but her courage could light a nation. Behind the screwball sparkle was a woman of grit and generosity. After surviving a near-fatal car crash as a teen, she carried deep empathy for anyone in pain. On set, she broke Hollywood's hierarchy, chatting with grips, sharing lunch with crew, and once bringing crates of oranges to keep everyone healthy during flu season. When her hairstylist fell ill and couldn't work, Lombard quietly paid her salary for over a year and delivered Christmas gifts to her children herself. During World War II, she threw herself into war bond drives, traveling city to city, inspiring crowds with patriotic humor. On her final trip home, her plane crashed into a Nevada mountain. She was 33. Some legends don't fade, they fall while serving. If this restores your faith in old Hollywood, hit subscribe and share this video with someone who still believes kindness is outdated, because these stories prove the golden age still glows. 11. Mary Pickford, the architect of empowerment. Mary Pickford wasn't just America's sweetheart, she was Hollywood's quiet revolutionary. Rising from childhood poverty after her father's death, she built her empire from sheer resilience. But what truly made her great wasn't her fame. It was her fierce compassion. In 1919, she co-founded United Artists, giving actors creative and financial control at a time when studios owned everything. Yet behind the mogul image was a caretaker. When silent star Mae Murray went bankrupt, Pickford gave her a home on her estate, calling her a permanent guest to preserve her dignity. During the 1918 flu pandemic, she converted part of her mansion into a makeshift hospital, nursing sick film workers herself. She donated to orphanages, funded hospitals, and mentored young actresses navigating an unforgiving industry. She didn't just make movies. She made fairness fashionable. 12. Irene Dunne, Faith Without Judgment. Irene Dunne earned the title First Lady of Hollywood, not through scandal or swagger, but through grace. Deeply grounded in her Catholic faith, she attended Mass daily yet never wore religion as armor. True faith, she once said, makes you more understanding, not more righteous. On set, she was the calm that quieted storms. If tempers flared, one warm smile from Irene could reset the entire room. When blacklisting gripped Hollywood, she anonymously paid rent and grocery bills for struggling families, regardless of their politics. After adopting her daughter at 42, Dunne became an adoption advocate, personally guiding other couples through the process. She also funded an orphanage in Los Angeles, but refused to have her name displayed anywhere on the property. Her kindness wasn't loud, it was consistent, and that's rare than fame. 13. David Niven, Charm Through Grief. David Niven had the rare gift of turning sorrow into grace. Behind his effortless wit and gentlemanly charm was a man who'd known deep tragedy. His first wife died in a freak accident at a party, and instead of hardening, he chose humor as his healing. Kindness, he said, is the only antidote to pain. On set, he greeted everyone cheerfully each morning, from co-stars to camera grips, and never raised his voice, even under pressure. When a nervous young decorator spilled coffee on his costume, Niven took the blame, pretending he had done it to spare her embarrassment. During World War II, he left Hollywood to serve on the front lines as a commando, refusing safe assignments despite his fame. Even while battling ALS later in life, he raised awareness with jokes, not pity. Wit fades fast, but grace lasts forever. 14. Debbie Reynolds, the archivist of goodness. Debbie Reynolds sparkled on screen, but her real brilliance was in how she treated people when the lights went off. Raised in poverty, betrayed in love, and often underestimated, she responded to pain with purpose. When her friend Agnes Moorehead grew ill, Reynolds moved her into her own home and cared for her until her final days. No publicity, just devotion. She turned heartbreak into action, founding a mental health charity after witnessing her father's struggles with depression. On film sets, she carried props, shared snacks, and sang between takes to lift tired crews. Off-screen, she became Hollywood's unofficial historian, rescuing thousands of costumes and artifacts the studios were discarding, including Marilyn Monroe's white dress, using her own money. She saw preservation as love, not nostalgia. She didn't just save history, she saved humanity with it. 15. Olivia de Havilland, Courage in Court and Compassion in Life. Olivia de Havilland's beauty was matched only by her backbone. In an era when studios owned their stars like property, she did the unthinkable. She sued Warner Brothers and won. Her victory, later called the de Havilland decision, became the foundation for every artist's right to freedom in Hollywood. But her courage wasn't just legal, it was personal. During Gone with the Wind, she protested when her black co-star, Butterfly McQueen, was banned from the Atlanta premiere. And years later, she invited her regularly into her home for tea. On set, she was known for her patience, quietly rehearsing lines with nervous actors to calm their jitters. Off-screen, she visited Vivien Leigh during her bipolar struggles, managing her affairs with compassion and loyalty that lasted decades. Strength isn't volume, it's conviction wrapped in kindness. 16. William Powell, the quiet benefactor. William Powell embodied old-school class, refined, composed, and endlessly kind. Behind the suave charm of the thin man was a man who believed dignity meant looking out for others when no one was watching. After the sudden death of his fiancée, Jean Harlow, Powell was devastated. But instead of collapsing inward, he created a hospital endowment in her name, funding children's care for decades. During the Great Depression, when a studio carpenter faced losing his home due to medical bills, Powell quietly paid the mortgage and hospital costs in full, swearing the family to secrecy. He'd chat with extras during breaks, offering advice, encouragement, or just a laugh to settle nerves. When his co-star, Myrna Loy, faced political backlash, he told the studio, "If she goes, I go." Real gentlemen don't announce their goodness, they practice it. 17. Jack Benny, the generous miser. Jack Benny built his fame pretending to be cheap, but in real life, generosity was his trademark. Off-screen, he quietly funded hospital wings, scholarships for music students, and entire families' rent without ever attaching his name. During World War II, while performing for troops, he met a young soldier who'd lost his violin in combat. Benny, himself an accomplished violinist, handed over his own priceless instrument, saying, "I can get another. You need this now." But years later, he created a foundation to provide instruments for underprivileged kids, turning one gesture into thousands of second chances. On set, he treated crew members like friends, teasing himself to lighten the day. When a talented black violinist was denied conservatory entry due to segregation, Benny paid for private training and used his influence to get him hired by a major orchestra. He made kindness his punchline, and it always landed. 18. Julie Andrews, strength in stillness. Julie Andrews' poise wasn't just charm. It was endurance wrapped in grace. Long before The Sound of Music, she survived a brutal childhood with an alcoholic mother and an abusive stepfather who forced her to perform in pubs to keep the family afloat. That early hardship forged a lifelong empathy for young performers. On set, she made a point to personally thank every crew member, no matter how cold or chaotic the shoot. During The Sound of Music, she endured bruised ribs and freezing alpine winds but refused a stunt double, determined not to delay the crew's work. Decades later, after a botched throat surgery ended her singing career, she turned her pain into purpose, funding vocal health research and scholarships for young singers. She lost her voice, but never her volume of heart. 19. Ricardo Montalbán, courtesy as resistance. Ricardo Montalbán faced Hollywood's prejudice head-on and fought it not with outrage, but with elegance. Constantly typecast as the Latin lover, underpaid, and often overlooked, he responded with dignity so unwavering it became his rebellion. When a stunt accident left him with lifelong spinal pain, he never complained, telling colleagues, "Everyone's carrying something invisible." In 1970, he founded the Nosotros Foundation to promote fair representation for Hispanic actors, but insisted it support all marginalized performers, not just Latinos. On set, he remembered every name, opened doors for crew members, and treated extras with the same respect as executives. During Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, few realized he filmed scenes in agony, but he never let discomfort shadow his grace. In a cruel industry, he proved courtesy is power. 20. James Garner, the tough gentleman. James Garner was the rare Hollywood star who made toughness look kind. Beneath his rugged charm was a survivor of an abusive childhood, beaten, neglected, and hardened too early. But instead of repeating that cycle, he turned his pain into protection for others. On every set, from Maverick to the Rockford Files, he learned every crew member's name and ate lunch with electricians instead of producers. During The Great Escape, when Charles Bronson bullied a young actor, Garner stepped in, ending it instantly. In 1963, he marched beside Martin Luther King Jr. at the historic March on Washington, defying studio warnings that his career could be over. He demanded integrated hotels while filming in the South and refused roles that pushed racial stereotypes. At home, he rescued stray dogs and funded animal shelters quietly. Real strength doesn't intimidate, it protects. In a world that worships the loud, they proved that quiet goodness can echo the longest. Maybe that's the true legacy of Hollywood's golden age, not the scandals, but the souls who made humanity fashionable. So, before you scroll away, do one thing they all did. Lift someone up without expecting applause, because kindness, not fame, is what makes legends eternal.